So today we head behind the scenes of KFC for their KFC Cooking School. It's actually pretty cool since I've been to a lot of KFC restaurants from around the world, in Canada, America, and Asia.
So my name is Mike Hannon. I work for KFC Canada. I've been with the company for about 5 years. I'm based out of Toronto, but Vancouver and British Columbia is one of the markets that I represent. I work with our franchise partners across the country. So I'm really happy, obviously, to be here with you today and spend some time with you today. And I hope that you'll really get a lot of the process and enjoy it. And this is my good friend David. He is the certified KFC chef for today. So this guy is the important person. So a couple of things about what you're going to see today. First of all, obviously we're going to take you into the back. You're going to see a tour of the kitchen, some of the key pieces of equipment and components that we use here at KFC. And then we're going to go into the back and you're going to actually take part in the process of preparing the chicken and cooking the chicken as well, which of course includes breading the chicken. So that you can really get a hands-on feel and approach to the magic, really, of how we create the product. The only thing that I can't tell you about today is what the 11 herbs and spices are. I'll tell you what one or two of them are, but I can't tell you the whole thing. That's actually in a vault in Louisville, so I don't even have access to it. But you can see on the wall over there, those are really the 11 herbs and spices, and you can see kind of 11 over there, and that's kind of testament to the quality and the signature taste of what we have at KFC across the country and around the world. So a couple notes just in general about our product, and we're really proud to talk about this, and this is part of the reason why we're doing this. You know, as you probably know, there's a lot of myths around the food industry. There's a lot of myths around KFC, right? People wonder, what's the chicken all about? What do we do with the chicken? What do we do to the chicken? And so forth. The reality is that our chicken is Canadian farm raised. It's delivered to the restaurants multiple times a week based on how much they need, how much they use. It's got no added steroids, hormones, anything like that. We don't do anything to the chickens to make them grow faster, bigger, anything weird. It's the same chicken that you get essentially at the grocery store. The second thing is that our taste is unique in terms of our competition because we have the original recipe, right? And that's what the Colonel created. And it's really the same more or less today around the world, pretty much wherever you go and enjoy KFC. The third thing that's important when you compare us to some of our competition or even other QSR brands that don't serve chicken is that we make our chicken fresh and it's hand breaded by real cooks in the back. So someone like David is in the back of the restaurant all day making the chicken fresh in batches to make sure that the quality that you're getting and that your families are getting is the utmost, and that's extremely important to us. That being said, this is the first time, and I mentioned this, I was talking to this group over here, this is the first time we've done this anywhere around the world. So there has been other markets that have done similar kind of cooking classes. For example, Australia did something where they had people come in, but the difference was you would go into the back and you would kind of see the process, but you wouldn't get to take part in the process. So this is the first time that we're doing this where you actually get to take part in the process. Now, one of the things that we take very, very seriously at KFC is food safety. Okay? So that means that food safety and hygiene is really the paramount of importance because we have to make sure that our team members are safe and that our guests are safe as well. So that being said, before we go in the back, we're going to suit up with hairnets, with aprons as well. Regardless of whether or not you're actually going to be breading, you still have to wear a hairnet and an apron. And then we'll go into the back, we'll do a bit of a tour of the kitchen. So there's basically the front where you are, which is kind of cash, tills, menu boards, pop, things like that, condiments. Then there's the packing area, which is right here. This is where all the meals would get put together. And you know, anything from sandwiches to chicken on the bone, gravy, mashed potatoes. There's screens that would tell the people working back here what are the orders, which order are they in, what needs to get prepared next, and so forth. A couple of pieces of equipment that I want to point out to you that are important. These guys here are hot holding units, and they do the same thing. Just this model's a little bit older, this model's a little bit newer, but they do exactly the same thing. These have the ability to hold product dry or moist. So some product needs to be held with a certain level of moisture. Some product needs to be held completely dry.
What would be a part that requires moisture?
So our chicken on the bone is a moist holding product, right? Okay, and the reason for that is basically the guy that I told you about that works in our kitchen. This piece of work happened many years ago, but essentially what they figured out is that our product holds best in a moist environment. There's other products, for example, like some of our sandwiches that would hold better in a dry environment. So a moist environment, it'll hold the proper amount of heat and moisture inside this unit. So there's a tray where water will go, and that water evaporates over time throughout the unit, creating that moist environment. Essentially what we want is for our product to hold, obviously in a safe temperature environment, but also at its maximum quality for the amount of time that we designate that says the product is good to serve to our guests for this amount of time. As that time is reached, okay, so our product holds for 90 minutes in this unit, and it's temperature and moisture controlled to allow it to hold for that time length, right? If we just put it into an oven, for example, and turned the heat up and held it there for 90 minutes, it would become dry and hard and not very flavorful. So this maintains the moisture of the product and the flavor of the product for 90 minutes. At 90 minutes, that's the threshold at which we decide it's no longer holding at the optimum quality, which means that it has to be discarded and not served to customers anymore. It has nothing to do with food safety. This product could effectively hold all day in here and still be safe to eat. It just wouldn't taste very good. It would be really dry, okay? So that's what both of these units do. This one just has these translucent doors, just easier for our people to get in and out and get the product in and out of there. And you'll see how that works when it comes in here later. So this product is holding, and it's holding for a certain amount of time, as I said. You can hold it by time up here, but we don't really rely on this because I can press this button and it comes up as a minute, an hour and 30, and then I can just press it again if I want to, right? So technically we don't want to rely on this because it's not necessarily foolproof or trustworthy. What we do is we actually have a book that we write it down. Okay, so it becomes, you write it down with pen, you can't change it, you can't erase it. You know that when tray number 1, for example, came up at this time, it's good until this time, at which point you have to discard it. So we want to make sure that we're very, very rigid on those practices. Okay? Very simple piece of equipment. It is hot, don't touch it. But this is just for basically grilling things like wraps when you would want to grill them together and get that nice kind of toasted surface on the outside. This is where we would hold anything like gravy, mashed potato, corn would be held in here, all sorts of packaging around. We've got lots of cold holding units. So this unit, for example, is for our sandwich station pieces, so lettuce, tomato, cheese, stuff like that. This unit up here is another hot holding unit, and this is where you'd have anything from popcorn chicken to strips, some of the sandwiches, and again, this can either be a moist or a dry unit. It has the capability to do both. Okay, so when these are called garages. When the garage is on, it's wet. It's a moist unit because it will recirculate all that steam that comes off the product and create a moist environment. If you take it off, it's a dry environment. Okay, so it can be both. Toaster for the buns. Fried up station, so where the fries will be held. Open frying. So if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you've probably seen units like this before. It's pretty much the same thing as you taking a pot, putting it on the stove, and heating up oil in it. So there's no pressure involved in this. It's a very simple temperature unit that just heats up the oil. Here, right here. So the orders will come through this printer, this screen. These are wireless terminals that the drivers can take with them to deliver the product and collect payment. We've got all the condiment stations set up here, as well as the delivery bags to keep the product hot as it's being transported to our customers. So that's pretty simple stuff. Come back here. This is just a staff area, okay, so staff can have a break, have a snack, eat their lunch, as well as some communication around things that are happening in the restaurant that we want to communicate to the teams. That would all be here. And then if you come back around here, we are in now the heart of the kitchen. So back here we have our washer and sanitize. This is kind of dishwashing area. It's not an actual automatic dishwasher. It's a washer and sanitize 3-compartment sink setup, which is pretty standard in quick service restaurants. We've got a hand washing station. This hand washing station is designated for cooks only, okay? Because back here it's what we would call a raw environment. You're working with raw product. It's becoming cooked product, and then it's transporting up to the packing area. So we want to make sure that the only person washing their hands in this area is the cook himself, all right? This sink over here is what we would refer to as a kitchen sink, chicken sink. And the sole purpose of this sink is to clean, inspect the chicken. Simple, okay? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. You've got a walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer behind you, so obviously all of our product is stored in one of those two environments, depending on what it is. Obviously the chicken is fresh, so it's stored in the cooler, not in the freezer. Coming over here, we've got our breading workstation, okay? So the breading workstation has, in this case, 2 different breading stations. Some restaurants only have 1, depends on the volume that they're doing. Some of our restaurants in various markets have 2 different types of chicken. So they'll have original recipe chicken, which is what you're gonna use and work with and taste today. And other restaurants might have hot and spicy, which is a different type of breading and obviously a different flavor profile. I'll talk just for a few minutes about the breading station itself to tell you a little bit of the process is sifting the flour. So this is also a sifting station as well. So if I take this out, inside this unit, if I pull off the cover, you're going to see some different components, but the main one here is this big giant brush. And if I turn it on, what you're going to see, all those little bits, tiny little bits that are popping up, we don't want those to go into the flour. We want those out. So it's going to push them along the lug and out the bottom into this plastic chute down here. And that gets thrown out in the garbage. The only thing that should be getting pushed down into the actual lug in the bottom is fresh, good, quality flour. And then from the bottom it goes into the top so that we're ready to bread our chicken. In this flour are the 11 herbs and spices. The spices weigh more than the flour. So if I was to let this sit overnight, for example, what's going to happen to those spices? They're going to settle at the bottom. And then if all I did was come in and bread chicken, we're going to get some chicken with a lot of spice on it, probably too much, so you'll taste way too much salt, too much pepper, and then others that won't have very little flavor at all. Because if you take the spices out, it's just plain flour. That's all it is. Pretty simple, right? So sifting it is critically important. So in the morning, when the cooks come in, they are hand blending, which I'll show you in just a few minutes, 20 times, and sifting through the machine twice to make sure that the breading is sifted evenly and that there's a good distribution of that flour all throughout. So there shouldn't be areas of this flour where I'm not getting any pepper or salt or anything as part of that mixture. Okay, so it should all be mixed out throughout. If it's really busy, and I'm just constantly cooking chicken batch after batch after batch after batch, then I need to sift this flour after 3 consecutive batches. So I can do 3 batches of chicken before I have to change this or sift this flour and change this water. At that point, when that happens, I sift the flour, discard the water, everything gets cleaned and sanitized. The whole table, the actual bin itself, this piece inside, it all gets washed, rinsed, and sanitized, and then put back together for the next round. However, if I'm only going to mix or bread 1 batch of chicken because we're not very busy, and then I'm going to go away and do something else for half an hour and come back, I would have to do the same process after 1 batch. You can never just bread chicken and just leave this sitting here for any length of time. Because obviously at that point, this is cold water that we use, but at that point the temperature would get too high, it would become possible food safety concerns, so we want to make sure that obviously that's not happening. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cookers as well. So what you see back here, these are very, very different than the open fryers that we saw in the front. These are pressure cookers. So back when KFC was very early in its infancy, they used to actually cook the chicken in a pot of hot oil on the stove, just like you would do at home. And then they would sift it out with kind of a sifting utensil to bring the chicken up out of the oil. And then the Colonel, who by the way wasn't a chef, he wasn't a food scientist, he wasn't like an expert in engineering, figured out, he basically went to a hardware store and he saw this pressure fryer that they were selling at the time, same kind of pressure fryer that you would buy at Walmart or Home Depot or any of those kinds of places, and they were selling it and saying it's great to cook your vegetables, soups, stews, things like that. So the Colonel went into the store and he said, hey, what do you think if I took one of these things and pressure fried chicken in it? And the guy was like, I'm pretty sure that's not a good idea. But the Colonel we know historically that he was a really determined guy. When he had an idea, it was going to happen one way or the other. So he brought the pressure fryer home and figured out what we would refer to as set points. So time, temperature, pressure of the cooker to optimize the flavor, the moisture, the crispness of the chicken. So then he said, okay, well, we're going to do this. We're going to do it across all the restaurants because he figured out that it's the best way of cooking chicken. But obviously he couldn't take $29.99 bought pressure fryer and do it at the volumes that we were doing in the restaurants at the time or today. So he commissioned companies and said, look, I'm going to do it. It's almost like a Kickstarter at the time. Invest money, I'm going to other people to invest money, and I want to come up with a company who's going to build these cookers for all of my restaurants. So he commissioned a bunch of different companies, and this is the company that won. It's called Winston, and the cooker itself is called a Collectormatic. The guy's name who he worked with was Winston. His last name was Sheldon. He passed away many years ago, but he worked very closely with the Colonel over the years of his life to develop this cooker. And really the cooker itself, what it does, how it works, has stayed the same from then till now. The only thing that's changed, some of the technology, the computer boards, the way that it works has changed a little bit, but what it actually does, time, temperature, pressure, is essentially unchanged over the years. These vessels or these cookers have a shelf life of about 25 years, so they can actually function properly, safely for 25 years until they have to be decommissioned. The reason they have to be decommissioned is because of metal fatigue. So after 25 years, we can't guarantee, Winston can't guarantee that it's going to hold the pressure properly and essentially not explode. So they're decommissioned well before that to make sure that everybody's safe. But up until then, as long as they're maintained properly, cleaned properly, and so forth, and certain parts have to be changed every so often, they can be used for a very long time, and they're quite expensive. So you'll see here, we've got this rack with different shelves on it. I can put 2 shelves full of chicken and drop it in. I'm going to press a specific button. If I want to fill the whole thing up with chicken, I'm going to press a different button, because the amount of time that it takes, the amount of pressure that it needs, the temperature that it needs to be at is different. So those have all been engineered.
And then you will wet both of your hands. You will lather up your hands up to your elbows and for 20 seconds. Or you can sing the happy birthday song twice.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Why is no one singing? Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. And again. Happy birthday to you. All together now. Happy birthday to you. Don't be shy. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. How old are you? No, I'm kidding. So we use in many of our restaurants sensor-controlled sinks and dispensers. It's not mandatory by any stretch, but it just makes it easier. You don't have to touch the taps. The temperature is controlled so that it's the right temperature for hand washing, not too cold, not too hot. It just makes it easier. Okay, so on that breading table over there, so you can kind of gather on behind him or over here, wherever you're comfortable, so you can get in and see what he's doing. Yes. So the first thing that he's going to do when he grabs the chicken, so the chicken is bagged for us at the supplier level and it's already packed. Technically, it's been cleaned to a minimal amount as well. Not cleaned as in dirty versus clean, but cleaned as in removing any excess fat, any excess material, any excess things like cartilage that needs to be removed. But we still go through the process of what we would call cleaning and inspecting, which is what he's doing now. So what he's making sure is that anything that really shouldn't go into the cooker doesn't go into the cooker. So sometimes there's excess fat that needs to be removed. Sometimes you'll find a blood feather here or there. Again, it's fresh product, so that has to be removed. And he's taking the thighs. So the thighs, there's a bone in the center that he's essentially breaking that bone so that the piece is able to do this freely. The reason that's important is to make sure that it cooks properly in the oil. If you don't do that, the oil won't be able to flow through the piece. Stuff that, some people are like, but you know what, it's really, really interesting what you see. So what he's going to do now is he's going to slowly dip that chicken down into the water, and he's going to leave it in there until those bubbles come up to the surface. What this is doing is it's getting the chicken wet. Any pieces that he's removed are going to come off the chicken. 2, it's being coated in water, which will help with the adherence of the breading. So once those bubbles are gone, which they are, he's going to turn it 90 degrees to the left, 120 degrees back to the right. And again, that just gets those pieces moving around so they don't come out into the flour in a big clump. Lifting it up, and he's going to hold it and just allow that water to drain. Okay? If we put this into the breading right now, we're putting far too much water into the breading, and you're going to get dough balls, which are uncooked pieces of breading. Okay? So once it's dripping, which is what it's doing now, then he's good to go. And he's gonna start what we call 7-10-7. That's a key core component of what KFC chicken is. So 7 is he's gonna roll the chicken 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what that's doing, again, moving the chicken. And now he's going to do the 10. So remember 7-10-7. So the 10 is he's going to get some flour onto that chicken. So he's just sprinkling the flour a little bit on top of the chicken. And then he's going to do alternating. This is called scoop and fold, scoop and lift. So you'll see him. So scoop and fold, scoop and lift. Scoop and fold, scoop and lift. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now before he starts his presses, which is the last 7, so that scoop and fold, scoop and lift is 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the most satisfying part. Now, before you start, let me just stop you for 2 seconds just so I can explain. He's used to going fast. Yeah. So he wants to keep going because he's used to doing this quickly. So,
restaurant isn't open.
so the pressing, actually, no, it isn't. It's close. That's what I say it is, but it's not. The pressing, again, you notice that he was putting his body weight into the pressing. Okay, what we see a lot of times when we train cooks is they feel the need to just kind of like, they do this. Like it's dainty. What I always tell them is, chicken's dead, it's not coming back. You're not going to hurt it, right? Okay, so what that does is it helps to adhere the breading to the chicken. That final press is really, really important. So now what he's going to do is he's going to grab the first 2 pieces, whatever pieces he finds. He doesn't have to find specific pieces. And he's going to do a shake and tap. Shake down and tap. And you notice he's tapping his wrists together, not the chicken, okay? What this is doing is getting any of the excess breading off. There is such a thing as too much breading going into the oil, which is going to cause the chicken to have lumps on it. Number 1, and number 2, it's going to degrade the quality of the oil faster, which we don't want. We want to maximize the life of the oil if we can. Besides chicken, oil is the most expensive thing used in the restaurant. Okay? Now, to your question, Fat Cat, that's your name now. Yeah. To your question before, so he is racking according to this racking chart. So he's taking specific pieces, which obviously he can identify just by looking at them, what they are, and he's putting them where they're supposed to go on the rack to make sure that they're cooking properly for both food safety and a flavor standpoint. Okay. The other thing that you may or may not notice, depending on what David sees in the chicken, as he's looking at the chicken and pulling the pieces out, he may find a piece that has a piece that's maybe not as breaded. There's what we would refer to as kind of a bald spot or a bald area. And what he'll do at that point, and I'll just show you as an example. Let's just say like this wing, for example. So there's some pieces here that have kind of exposed meat where there's no breading. So what I can do is I can grab flour in my hand almost like a baseball, press it onto the chicken. I can do it on the other side, press it onto the chicken, and then just do another shake and tap, and then put it back onto the wrap. This way, right? Yeah. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just to make sure. Reason for the top racks that I'm putting on, so that when I put it into the oil, or when David puts it into the oil, these pieces aren't going to float up and just float freely throughout. You don't. So what that means is that David's going to use separate gloves to drop the chicken and pull the chicken out of the cooker, because the cooker has to go through the same transition. So what he's doing right now is what's called a toss stir. He's going to stir the cooker gently just a few times to get the oil moving, so that we make sure it's at a consistent temperature. You're going to see the temperature of the thermostat meter in the cooker is going to start to drop by probably 2 to 3 degrees, and then it's going to come back up. We can't drop this chicken until it says drop. And that means it's the cooker telling us it's at the right temperature to be dropped. So now it just turned on, and it's going to go back up to 325, 326, and then it'll say drop. And as soon as it says drop, so from the time we finish the breading to the time this goes into the cooker, it's about 2 minutes. 2.5. So it's just kind of like it goes. But you know, ideally, what you should be seeing is a nice golden brown color, which I am seeing. You should see that even distribution of the spices and the pepper. The one that you're looking for is the pepper, because that's what you're going to see the most of. So again, when we talk about the sifting in the back, when we talk about the hand blending, that's the end result. That's what you should be seeing. Obviously, it should be moist. It should be tasty. Dark meat's going to be moister than the white meat. You should also taste that original recipe seasoning in the gravy as well, because it's in there. So in addition to being in the chicken, it's also in the gravy. And there should be, you know, almost an al dente-ness to the skin itself, like a crispiness to the skin. It's not going to be crispy crunchy. It's not like a crunchy breading, but it should have a nice crispness to it when you bite down. And obviously, a lot of the flavor is going to be in the breading itself, because this is not marinated chicken, so the flavor is actually in the breading. So how's it tasting?
Very delicious.
Yeah? When was the last time everybody had KFC? Like last week, I hope, right?
Last week.
Yeah, right? Right, because we're here all the time. Okay.
So we actually had a lot of fun today, and it was very eye-opening to see that it was actually just great Canadian farmed chicken that goes into this product. No hormones or steroids added to the chicken. So they held this event to really increase the transparency about how they cook it. So even though I have my own blog, I wasn't paid to come here. I just was a really big fan, and I wanted to see how it's like to be able to go from raw chicken to the KFC product that we have grown to love.